Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's well. We'll be starting part two today, Life 101, and it's what's next. And so, before we dive right in, I want to say this is a little bit difficult to discuss. Some of this may be triggering for some people. So, if you have to get off, I totally understand. Today, we'll be discussing in this series. Um, environments that are not so positive, environments that may be toxic, and how people will normalize toxic behavior. This part two is not intended to normalize poor behavior or people that were abused or treated unkind. In this part of the series, I just really want to discuss what to do next. What if you grow up in an environment that was not positive, where you were abused sexually or mentally or emotionally or all of the above? Where do you go with that? How do you even begin to say, how do I go on from maybe some behavior that has tormented me, blocked me, made me feel unwanted or unwelcome, not just in life, but being with myself when nobody else is around? How do you begin to unravel any of that? I may take this into a few more, different parts, but I just want to say at the very beginning, there is no way that a podcast can begin to unravel what you have experienced throughout your life. There's just no way. Um, Being a therapist and understanding that life comes in layers and that you may be able to address certain things and walk past that. But if you've experienced any level of grief, any level of abuse in any way, there is no way that a podcast can totally address all of that. And I want to say to those who may have experienced emotional, sexual, any type of abuse, I can't even begin to express to you the sorrow that I feel for that because I see it with people as adults, and I try to express to them how I feel as a parent to inflict harm on my child. My mind, I can't wrap my mind around it. So I say to you, I don't understand. I say to you, there are no words that I can express to you to let you know the sorrow. Excuse me. Excuse me. It is a empathy that I have down in my soul to say to you, I don't have all the words, but I want you to know that I'm very present. And I just want you to know that these are steps that I take very, very lightly. And it's a great honor that you are listening to me because people don't understand when you have experienced any level of emotional abuse or any level of abuse, excuse me, I don't know why my throat's bothering me today, excuse me, that it is very difficult to wrap your mind around how do you even express to someone else that the people that I was born from, I came from, treated me in this way. And sometimes it's not those people. Sometimes it's our siblings. So it's not always our parents or our grandparents or whomever. It might be a different family member. So again, I say to you, I don't have all the words. I just want you to know that there are really no words that could adequately, excuse me, adequately describe the things that you have experienced and survived. And my purpose in this episode is to hopefully give you some tools to thrive, not just leave you abandoned and bruised and feeling left. I hope that I could give you something to say, okay, now where do I go next? What's next? And for those that have experienced any level of abuse from those that we think we should love us, there is a place that you can get to that I call next. The first thing that I want to say is nobody can tell you how long it should take you to get over what you have experienced. Everybody is at a different place. Some people can just walk past things and they're able to just thrive and come up out of it very, very quickly. But for the rest of us who, it takes me a minute when somebody does something to me. I could not imagine other egregious acts from family members that have did whatever to us, to be able to say, okay, you need to be able to come out of that in a year or two or 5 years or 10 years, or however long it takes you. um, but I can say you can begin the journey. And what I mean by beginning the journey is looking at where you are now as an adult. If you are a teenager or someone in their early 20s listening to this, it's not going to just come in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It is a process. I call it a marathon. When you have survived any type of abuse, the next thing that you can do with assistance, with a therapist, a psychiatrist, and some people use medication, um, is to begin the journey with recognizing I have experienced something that is so horrendous, I might not be able to tell anybody about all of it. There's certain things that happen in our life, even if it's not, abuse, within our family, because sometimes people always think abuse as sexual. Sometimes it is mental abuse. Sometimes it is emotional abuse. People will withhold their love from you because they have their own things to work through. And so often when the word abuse is mentioned, people naturally, for whatever reason, and I get it, we naturally our thoughts go to sexual abuse. And sometimes it is manipulation. Sometimes it is people trying to get us to think the way that they do. Or they use our words and twist them against us because they know that we're still growing, we're still developing, and they will use our words against us to entrap us. So it's not always sexual abuse. Sometimes it's emotional abuse. They will withhold love from us. And sometimes it's just outright manipulation. We can paint it any way that we want, but we have been mentally abused and emotionally abused by family members. Sometimes it's our parents. Sometimes I've seen grandparents too. I mean, that one right there, just I don't have even words for that one, because the ancestors, those who are older and should be more mature, sometimes they're the abusers. And I am not making excuses for anybody, but I am saying there is a place that you can go next, that will not have to hold you hostage. And you begin to go to that place next by recognizing I have suffered this. This has bothered me. It's acknowledging it. Sometimes that's the beginning of the work, just acknowledging I came from a family that treated me unkind. I came from a family that abused me mentally, emotionally, or they still try to do that, because sometimes as adults, family members still try to abuse us in those ways that they did as a child. And it may not come out physical, but it may come out emotionally, trying to guilt us into taking care of them, or guilt us into doing things we don't know we don't want to do. So it's all of those things, and recognizing those places that you begin to walk out your next. And I said this probably at the beginning of the first podcast. Everybody is different. What works for me may not work for you. You have to recognize what works for you. How do I begin to walk out what is next for me? Some people, they just it takes them a long time to forgive. They just cannot forgive, mom or dad or granny or whoever did this egregious act. They cannot walk past what the act was. And that is okay for them. I can say for my own self, I did not experience what the next person did, but I've had things that bothered me, that affected me. And I can say for me, I had to forgive. And again, my situation was not like the next person. I cannot say what happened to me happened to the next person, and mine was not as egregious. Trust and believe I didn't have anything horrendous happen in the way that I've seen some of my cases. So I am saying again, everybody is different. That's what I'm getting to. So for me, based on what happened with me, I've had to forgive people, and I know the forgiveness was the gift for myself, because I cannot be the person I want to be. I want to be a happy person. I didn't say perfect. I said I just like waking up with peace. I like being able to sleep at night. And I know that if I did not walk through the process of forgiving people, whatever they did to me, I could not be that person. So the forgiveness was really about me. It was selfish. It was the thing that worked for me. I had to every day say to myself, not to anybody else, I forgive because it is for me. It is the gift that I give to myself. I didn't want to be an angry mom, so I knew that I needed to be a certain kind of person so that I was not an angry mom, a bitter colleague, or a bitter wife, or a bitter daughter, whatever that title was. I knew that the forgiveness I was giving for the act was for myself, because that very act would have still held me hostage if I did not forgive the act. I didn't say that the forgiveness allowed the person to come back into my life or to my space. That's very different. That's for another podcast. This one is, what do you do next based on what's happened to you? And for some of us, it may still be going on. And so the first thing that you may have to reconcile with yourself is, what do I need to do with my next? Do I need to distance myself, create boundaries, especially if they're in your family? For some people, they can cut their parents off, they can cut, whoever did this act off. And if you need to do that, I commend you. For some people, they can't. They can't cut their parents off. Excuse me. They can't cut that loved one off, or if they can't see, they can see that person and they'll be at that family event, but that doesn't mean you need to speak to them. I am not saying forgiveness is access. You don't need to give them access to you again. You know that this person harmed you. You know this person is manipulative. You know that this person has not changed. Every situation is different. You have to weigh it. What was the act? You don't have to tell us. Please don't leave it in the comments. I'm saying you have to weigh the situation. Based on what happened to me, I weighed the situation. I said, okay, Sonetta, do you want to be happy? All of that, yes. Do you want peace? Yes. Do you want to sleep at night? Yes. And I needed to have that so that I can be my best self. So I needed to forgive what they did. I didn't say I forgot. I needed to forgive. And that was for me. And sometimes it is a process. People think when you forgive somebody, it's one day. I don't know who forgives in one day. If you do, leave a comment in the section. I want to talk to you. I think it's wonderful that you're able to forgive somebody in one day and you don't think anything about it, even when you see them. For me, it is a process. I am human. If you cut me, not only will I bleed, but there will be scars once I'm healed. So, anytime anything happens to anyone, it takes time. And forgiveness is just like that marathon. It takes time. Give yourself the space that you need to heal, but also recognize that healing is that marathon. You may need to do it over and over and over again. And what I learned, I try not to give myself, put myself out there too much in saying what worked for me, because again, we're all so different. What I learned about the healing process is that when I saw the person or the people, if I still had a thought in my mind, like I could really just drive by and just run you over, that's just human. I have not forgiven them yet. And that's okay and that's normal. But what I did think was, after I had got to a certain place, if I heard about them and I felt nothing, I recognized I had healed, because I didn't think, okay, let me just drive by their house, or let me just do something to them. I'm human, so I had no thought. That's how I knew I was healed from that situation. I had no thoughts. I didn't feel one way or the other. That's how you know that you've walked past that place in with that particular relationship. Every relationship is different. Every situation is different. Some situations, I will say to you, will be a lifelong endeavor. You will have to keep forgiving over and over and over, and it is a process. Depending on how egregious the act was, that's how long it will take. There is no way that somebody can mistreat you for years and do whatever they did and you forgive in a few weeks or a few years. It's just no way. It's unheard of. Um, and be honest with yourself, even if you're not honest with your therapist or your psychiatrist. Be honest with you. Recognize the act was so egregious to me that I will walk with the limp all of my life, but I will keep walking. There are certain things that happen to us that just leave us with a scar. We walk differently, and that is okay as long as you keep walking. And so in this in this part 2, I just really wanted to talk about that part of us in our environment and how certain environments were not positive. People treated us unkind, they abused us, they abused our innocence, especially when we're young people. So some of these things happen when we're adults, but they began when we're little. They don't just Nobody just totally abuses you most of the time. When you become an adult, that pattern started when we were little because that's how we allowed it when we became adults. We allowed that behavior because it began when we were little. Somebody emotionally abused us, and that's why we were able to get into a relationship later on where they did the same things. And so all I'm saying is, from the place that you are right now, as this young adult, as this adult, what do you need to do next? Is it forgiveness? Is it reconciliation with yourself, not the person? Reconciling, my, this happened to me and it was my dad or it was my sister or my brother or whomever. Because sometimes reconciling with yourself is the first step that needs to be done. And for the rest of us who did not have maybe something so egregious, we need to have grace for the people that are in our life that did. And so I will end here today, and I just want to say thank you all for listening, and I'll see you on the next podcast.